You're listening to Packers Talk Network. PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans. We just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into national sports media talking points and headlines and all that nonsense. We're sticking to real football, and we're sticking to the Packers. So if you want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all the socials. Subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things help us out quite a bit. Don't take you very much effort at all. They are free as well. And before we get started, let's take care of some business and share a few words from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at TicketKing.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to PackersTalk.com/tickets or browse their website at TheTicketKing.com. Good evening, Tim. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Miles. Doing good. How are you? Happy post-NFL draft.
Yeah. Happy post-NFL draft. I mean, my goodness. Any complaints? Are there any room for complaints?
No, I mean we'll get into it. There's a lot to break down, but I'm not complaining. I think the Packers had a really solid draft, and the direction that they took throughout the draft made a lot of sense, and nothing that I can really get on here and start screaming. Not that I would scream about it, but I don't think there's anything that we can really complain too much about. There's some debate we can have for sure, and we'll get into it all. But no, I'm really happy with their draft. That made a lot of sense. The direction Goody went and the positions he tried to fill. Just, I'm excited to have 11 new Packers to dive into and talk about. And I think they made their team. They're a better team today than they were, a week ago when we were talking. So really happy about that. What are your, just overall kind of feelings about what they did with their 11 picks?
Well, first of all, let me say I look forward to the first thing that happens. I don't know what it's going to be that actually makes you get on here and yell about it. I'm looking forward to that, man. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe it takes winning the Super Bowl. Hopefully it's not for bad reasons.
Well, I think I was close. There were so many Joe Barry games where I was – I do all that during the game. So I'm more calmer by the time we get on here and chat. But if you see me during a game, sometimes you'd be surprised.
Someone get Tim an emergency podcast so he can really let it out.
A live feed of watching the game. Yeah.
Man. So we're going to get into our final draft reactions. We're going to talk about some of our biggest surprises. We'll go pick by pick and just say a few words about each guy. We already talked about the top 5 picks when we did our kind of our special edition pod on Friday, which was a lot of fun. We appreciate y'all for joining us for that. So we'll touch on a few of those guys a little bit less, and then starting at Evan Williams and going down, we'll probably have a little bit more to say about a few of those guys. So we're not going to get too lengthy. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing that's beautiful about all this is we don't have to play guessing games anymore, but we have no idea how these guys are going to turn out, right? We see it every year. You think a guy looks good, and then he flames out, or a guy comes out of nowhere and looks like a stud. So what's fun is we get mini camp, we get some OTAs, and we got to go through a bit of a drought. We got to make that stretch of nothing going on there in July and then hit training camp, and that's when we really start seeing some of these guys come to life as Green Bay Packers. But Tim, why don't you kick us off, man? We're just what are your final overall reactions from the draft?
I thought they did a great job. The things that come to mind are they drafted a bunch of athletes. As we talked about throughout all of our draft breakdowns, all the episodes we did, they look for athletes. That's why the relative athletic score, we talked about it so much. I know they don't use that exact, formula, but they use something close to it, whatever it is. They took a lot of really good athletes. They took a lot of players that are versatile, that can play, different roles. Javon Bullard, the second round pick, can be a safety. He can be a nickel. Literally everyone from the Packers who got up and had a press conference over the weekend mentioned nickel with him. So that'll be interesting. You have an interchangeable linebacker in Adrian Cooper, who can be a Mike. He can be a Will. You have Jordan Morgan, the first round pick, who's going to probably start off at tackle, but could eventually kick inside the guard. There's just a lot of versatility throughout the picks, throughout all 3 days. I like that. I like the athleticism they brought. And a lot of these guys are really experienced. They played a lot of football. So you're not banking on somebody who maybe only played, 8 to 10 games or something like that. And it's they're all projections, but somebody with fewer games, you're really kind of projecting and you're hoping and you're thinking you see something, but you really don't know. These guys have a lot of college experience. So you can kind of see what they truly are at this point as you're projecting them into the NFL. So I like that. And with 11 picks and with the positions that they doubled up or tripled up for safeties, they've brought a lot of competition throughout the roster. I mean, really every position, there's fierce battles that are going to be going on throughout the all season and training camp. So they're much deeper. I think the competition is going to bring out the best in the rookies, and it's going to bring out the best, hopefully, in the players that we're here and developing. They're not just resting on these are our guys and we're not really going to push them. Everybody's going to be pushed. And at certain positions, offensive line, safety, linebacker, there's a lot of guys that are there now. And when you triple up and take 3 safeties, it gives you a better chance of hitting on one of them. But it's also going to push, Bullard walks in the door. He's probably a starter next to Xavier McKinney, but he's going to have to earn it with 2 other safeties coming in there with him.
Yep.
And it allows them to, if 1 or 2 of those guys don't work out, well, they took a third player. So their chance, their batting average should be better because they tripled up there, doubled up at linebacker, tripled up on the offensive line. So you're giving yourself more chances to hit on guys, but you're also increasing the competition within the rookie class and within, the current roster. So yeah, to me, it was versatility, athleticism, and now the competition that it's going to create. So those were, kind of the big bullet points that I took away from there as far as what they did throughout the 11 picks over the 3 days.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I'm really excited about what they did, and yeah, I mean, there's a big framework for how Gooten and team are making this decision, right? So while we like to kind of to pinpoint the RAS scores and it comes down to these thresholds or whatever it may be, I think at the end of the day, there's ways for all of those things to be bent and kind of tested, and they say it a lot, and I think some people probably take it as just sort of NFL talk or speech or whatever. But go back to the film, and does a guy play like his testing? Whether that's good or bad, right? If a guy looks really fast or really strong, does he play that way? And if he does, great. Then you're just confirming what you see, and that's even better. It makes the decision easier, or the evaluation, I think, easier. But on the other side of things, what if a guy looks great on film and then tests like crap? I think we saw a lot of that this offseason, and it makes fans, where we're thinking a little bit simpler about this, go, never mind. And it's just like, well, maybe not, though. I mean, we've seen plenty of guys who don't test like all-stars come in and be all-pros that, they come in and make an impact. They win championships. I mean, I was saying it at the beginning of the offseason. 2 of the greatest receivers of all time ran a 4.6 and a 4.7 40. Jerry Rice ran a 4.7. T.O. ran a 4.6. You just got to put on the tape, put on the film. What do they look like on the field? And we can ask that about a guy this year, right? Does Xavier Worthy look like he plays record-breaking speed that much faster than all the other guys that he's coming out with? I haven't really looked at it through that lens yet, but I think it's a fair question to ask, and probably how guys are evaluating this. Now, of course, the NFL failed and let Xavier Worthy go to Pat Mahomes. My goodness. The only worst thing they could have done is let him go down to Miami, which I'm sure Miami was just sitting there saying, do it, I dare you. But they got Jalen Wright, which, I don't know how much better that is. Another really fast running back for that offense. So at the end of the day, it's all really interesting, but now at least we know who went where. We can argue a little bit about why. I think one thing that's fascinating, and we can talk a little bit more about it in the surprises section, but it's just fascinating to me that the Packers seemed pushed into DeJean and Barton as sort of their favorites, where they passed on both of them.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to look at there, and really, if nothing else, it's just, hey, let's not take ourselves too seriously leading up to the draft, right? We got mock drafts, we got evaluations. Don't be the guy that's like, oh, well, I had this guy graded here and not here. This is just a ridiculous reach. It's like, yeah, well, they're paid to do this job for 12 months out of the year. Maybe, just maybe, they have more information than you do. I think really what we should do is just have a little humble pie and go, I wonder how they saw something so much different than what I saw. I think that's where we maybe learn a little bit. We can take something away from this process. But overall, I loved the draft. I loved how it fell. It was really exciting to see what they did. I think a lot of us were sitting there almost every, probably 5 picks in front of every Packers pick going, all right, are they going to move up? What are they going to do here? And
Yeah.
I think it's even almost more exciting when they don't have to, because now you're seeing that, oh, there's some guys on the board here that they like. That's a good thing. We want that. So yeah, at the end of the day, very excited about how it went. He made some moves for a couple of guys. It's funny to me, he trades up for Evan Williams, and then other people are like, oh, what a reach. It's like, listen, if he trades up for him, I think that let's just not immediately call it a reach. Let's go, why'd he trade up for him? He clearly likes that guy, wanted that guy, and thought somebody else was about to take that guy. So, we can get into that with each of the individuals a little bit more. But, yeah, overall, just love what they did. And I think it's really cool. One thing that Packers fans maybe we aren't paying attention to enough, but the way they will always tell you it's best player available, but I think the way that they're evaluating right now is definitely geared towards need. To draft the way they did and to follow a pattern that we had talked about a lot on this podcast leading up to it, which is invest in free agents where you intend to invest your draft picks. And that's what he did. He invested draft picks at safety. He signed a free agent safety. Invested draft picks at running back. Signed a running back. Invested draft picks at tackle or O-line. Signed O-line. So, there are patterns out there. The Senior Bowl is another one. Nothing is surefire, but it at least gets you in the right direction on where the Packers staff is looking. And I think overall, Packers Twitter did a good job of figuring out where that was. We weren't right on, but we talked about a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I think it's still hard to pick the guys that they're going to pick, figure that out ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I think we're able to get a lot better idea of at least the pool of players that they would consider and the guys they probably wouldn't consider. And the athletic testing numbers are a really important part of that. That is a focus of them. And you can look at over the years, especially since Goot took over, but you can go back to Ted Thompson, like they're drafting athletes, they're drafting guys with certain measurements and certain testing numbers. Like it matters. It matters a lot to them. But there's other things, like 8 or 9 of these guys played at the Senior Bowl this year out of 11 picks. And they've shown that over the last couple of years, hitting the Senior Bowl heavy. Like if you want to know who they're going to draft, pay really close attention to the Senior Bowl, because they're going to take some guys from that draft. And this year, almost their entire class. I mean, that's incredible. So Senior Bowl athletes, and they keep saying versatility, and I think they showed it this year. I mean, they like guys who can do different things in different roles, and they're not just, you're going to line up and you're only going to be a guard. No, you better be able to play other positions. Or, we joke about it. Goody has these press conferences and he doesn't really say anything, but he kind of does. You kind of got to listen to him. He talked about we need numbers at linebacker. He went and took 2 linebackers. He wanted versatility and somebody that could be interchangeable at safety with Xavier McKinney, somebody that could play post, that could come down, that could cover the slot, that could play in the box. Javon Bullard's that guy. And even Evan Williams is probably that guy, or at least, close enough to that to be that. Oladapo is probably more of a true safety, but he's got versatility to his game as well. And we know that they like versatile offensive linemen. They rarely will take a guy and just say, you're a left tackle, you're going to stay at a left tackle. Bakhtiari's would have been a Hall of Fame player if he didn't wreck his knee. He could stay at left tackle. He doesn't have to be versatile.
Yeah, well, when you're good enough at a position, stay there.
But they love the Zach Tom and Elton Jenkins, those guys that can move around. And that's what they're looking for. And the 3 offensive linemen that they took have some versatility, especially the first 2, where they can probably play multiple positions. So, yeah, you got to listen to what they say, even though they don't really reveal much. But what they do say, it matters, and you can get some nuggets out of that. But Senior Bowl athletic testing numbers, and they like guys who've played the game. They like guys with experience. They don't take too many players that only come in with a handful of starts. You don't really see them do that. They want to be able to see that you can play football and you can do it, over a long period of time.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've heard repeated from a few places, and I think is worth repeating and just makes a lot of sense, you're projecting what you think these guys will do.
Yes.
Not all of that is evident on the film of what they've done. So, also try to put that lens on it as well with some of these guys. If there's a guy, I don't know why they did that. Well, I mean, there's certain guys, and I think, Hopper is probably the most obvious one. The guys, I had him graded in, to 200s or, whatever. He wasn't graded as high. When you look at the Missouri defense, it's not one that really strikes fear in you in the SEC.
They had a good year last year, though. I'll say that. They had some players.
And they clearly did. But that's where I think you can be limited by your supporting cast in college as far as what you can demonstrate you're capable of. You don't know what he was asked to do and how much that aligns with his skill set. I don't know a whole lot about the Missouri defense and all of that. Certainly welcome to tell us more about it if you're more familiar with it, though, Tim. Because I think, and again, I pointed out before, there's a reason they went to Missouri's Pro Day on the same day as Michigan's. Yeah. Michigan won the national championship. They had plenty of guys coming out, and certainly within range that the Packers would be picking. So it's just very interesting to me that they made that choice. And obviously there were probably guys at Michigan's Pro Day, but Goot is the one who went to Missouri instead of Michigan. So, but either way, yeah. So it's a projection, and Hopper's one. If you look at him, there's a skill set, in my opinion, that projects well forward. Especially with good coaching and a superior supporting cast to what he's had at Missouri. So, hey, check it out. We got a comment here from Jerry Sandusky. Big fan, guys. I've been listening ever since I found out you were a couple. How nice. Oh, goodness gracious. We like to have fun on this podcast. Appreciate you, Jerry. But anyway, anybody else has some fun comments, please jump in with us doing the draft reactions. And biggest surprises, man. What was your biggest surprise about this draft?
You touched on Hopper. I thought that was, at least where they took him, that was a surprise. Beyond that, I thought it was surprising they didn't take a corner until the 7th round, the very end of the 7th round. Now, having said that, it seems like there's a possibility Bullard's going to be, or at least compete at nickel. So that could kind of change the makeup, and his versatility in the secondary can kind of change what they do. But as far as a straight corner, yeah, I was really surprised that they didn't take a corner until late on day 3. Also surprised they didn't hit on either defensive lineman. They had a few in for 30 visits, or an edge rusher. So those were the 2 positions where I think they could have definitely used some help. And it was surprising that they didn't address them. I thought corner might have been what they ended up doing in the first round, and the fact that they didn't do that until the very end of the 7th round, that was surprising to me. But beyond just those 2 or 3 positions, I can't say I'm really like surprised. I think their philosophy, and you mentioned it already, of we're going to sign somebody in free agency, and then we're going to still go to that position in the draft. Goots proved that. He did it when he signed the Smith brothers, and then he drafted Rashawn Gary. So, and he's done it, numerous times since then, and he did it in this draft. They signed Xavier McKinney. They needed somebody to go with them. They drafted 3 guys. Yep. So it's something that he does. It's something that he believes in. They hit on positions of need, and they needed linebackers. They took 2. They need depth and competition along the offensive line. They took 3 of them. So none of that was surprising. I think it all made sense. But, I thought cornerback would be addressed in the draft much earlier than it was. And not that defensive line is an immediate need, but it could be a year from now. So, and they brought in, like I said, they brought in a few guys for visits to Green Bay. I thought they could go defensive tackle or edge rusher, but, I don't think there was nothing in this draft that made me just, jaw hit the floor, where I just never saw that coming, and he's done a few of those over the years, but
yes.
I don't think anything really stood out anywhere near that this year. It was a pretty reasonable and, I don't want to say predictable, because you don't know the names or anything like that, but as far as what they addressed and what they did, it wasn't too surprising at all. Did anything like stand out to you? Was there a player they took that you thought no way that they would ever take them and they did, or positions that they didn't hit on or that they did hit on that you didn't think needed to be addressed?
I will say I thought they would address corners sooner, but again, when you look at how everything's laid out and you consider that they have more information than we do, if their cornerback room is healthy, it's pretty deep as is, right? And so only adding 1 body to that room, I think, is fair. It's certainly not an emergency if you don't. And then considering the guy they got, Kalen King, I mean, that's a very, very interesting pick, and I think maybe the point's been made quite a bit today and since over the last couple of days, but not everybody's probably heard it. But I mean, Kalen King at the beginning of this evaluation cycle, so essentially at the end of the 2023 draft, he was considered one of the top cornerback prospects coming into this 2024 draft. He had I guess, less than stellar season. I don't even know that it was a bad season. I guess he had a bad game against Marvin Harrison Jr., which is probably overhyped. Didn't test well. But, yeah, so his stock fell. But, yeah, I mean, at one point, based on his play on the field, and again, going back to that point of, like, watch the film, he was considered one of the best DB prospects in this draft. And I don't know that anything has happened that changes his ability to be that. So, again, you can say he had a rough season. Tim, we'll get into him more. You, as a Penn State fan, you can maybe speak to that a little bit in more detail. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit surprising they didn't take corner sooner. I thought there were some options that they could. But more so for me, I was surprised that receiver did not end up being best player available at any point for them. That just as deep as this class was and as special as some of these guys can be, I really thought that was going to be something that happened. Am I upset that it didn't? Absolutely not. I don't care. This room is loaded. As it is, the fight for receiver 5 and 6 is going to be heated. You've got Malik Heath and Bo Melton, who are both fine candidates for the roles there. So I don't see any issue at all. And again, assuming everybody's healthy, I like this room a lot.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely – I know we're a year out, but I would guarantee they're taking at least 1 receiver next year, just because that's when you start to get into the coming up on contract time with Watson and Dobbs. So you got to really start looking to the future. And who knows how any of these guys are going to play in 2024, but you at least start getting into like the contract situations and planning ahead. And I can't see them not addressing receiver 2 years in a row. So they didn't do it this year, but I I think you can pretty much guarantee next year they definitely will be taking one somewhere within the draft.
I would assume that, yeah. And they've already looked ahead too. They understand what that class of prospects looks like and where their strengths are, and you may not have them totally ranked, but that's one of those things. Just real quick, I'll turn it back to you, but that's one of those things where you look at the tight end class here, and then in hindsight, looking at the pick of Musgrave and Kraft last year, looks a lot smarter. Understanding what was coming, whereas fans, I don't know that all of us had that foresight. I certainly didn't. But
yeah, no, I was just going to say with the receivers too, it seems like every year we're getting, or maybe not every year, but just about every year we're getting really good receiver classes, just because that's the way football's played.
Strong ones, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way football's been played. So I almost feel like it's becoming one of those positions where like you can continually fill it and find guys. I mean, they're proving that right now with the young guys that they're developing. So, yeah, you didn't take one this year, but you can go back next year because there's going to be some guys there. It's just, are we going to see a down receiver draft anytime soon? I don't know. The way they just kind of, the 7-on-7. Right. And the way the position's such a focus, starting in the high school level now, and it's developed so much, and it's such a, everybody throws the ball, and there's all these different 7-on-7 camps and stuff like that. So there's always receivers out there, and it's it's the glamour position in a lot of ways after quarterback. Guys want to play receiver. So yeah, I expect that next year.
Yeah. I haven't looked ahead. I know I already saw some stuff floating around about, way too early, this and that. I would like to take a look and see what it looks like. But as we were going through this class, there were a couple of guys that stood out on film where I was like, wait a second, who is that? Underclassmen that weren't coming out this year. So there's a couple names that popped out just that way, but we'll get into that stuff in the future. We don't need
plenty of time for that.
But yeah, overall, no huge surprises. I think that I just really enjoyed how the draft played out. Biggest surprise, because I was predicting this a lot, is that I thought they would come out with the receiver. I was hoping they'd come out with one of the more talented guys at the top that maybe shouldn't be there when they were picking. But either way, this draft class is very exciting. I think that's just, if you're not excited about this, then you're taking in the wrong information. Tune your radio somewhere else or whatever. Tune into the Packers Weekly podcast. We'll help you out. We got a lot of optimism here. But either way, yeah, very exciting draft class. No huge surprises. No big letdowns. Nothing like that. I don't know. Anybody listening, jump in the comments. What surprised you the most about this draft class from the Packers? So let's start buzzing through, man. Let's hit each of these guys. Again, we touched on the first 5 in our last episode, a little special edition that we did on Friday. So we won't go too deep into each of those guys, but we got Jordan Morgan here at the top. Overall, pretty happy with this pick.
Yeah, I think he's very much a Packers pick. He was one of those guys. Thought maybe at 41. Be a really nice pick. 25. I don't care that it was 25 and not 41. It makes sense at 25. I like a lot about his game. He's athletic. He's got good size. He's got the capability to play left tackle where he can kick inside the guard. I know everybody wants to kick him inside the guard. I say hold off on that. Let him come in and play tackle and see what he's got there before we, crush him for having shorter arms and say he's got to be a guard. Like, yeah, his arms are short, but he's got left tackle feet. He's got left tackle ability. So let's leave him there for a while and see what he's got. But yeah, again, a guy with experience, I believe was a captain, went to the Senior Bowl, did a good job down there. He's got to improve his strength, but he's coming off an ACL injury in 2022. So I think just naturally being further out from that, instead of rehabbing, he can get in a weight room more. But he's got to improve his hand placement. There's a lot of video of him. His hands are way too wide. So things like that, that's coachable. But he's got great athletic ability, and that's not coachable. Being able to get on the run and being able to go up against some good blockers. There's some good clips. He went up against UCLA's Latu, who's a first round pick, shut him down. Now there weren't very many snaps of them one-on-one, but when Latu was over top of him, Morgan shut him down. So yeah, I like him a lot. I definitely want to see him at left tackle. I want to see him compete with Rasheed Walker. And if he proves he can't play left tackle, then yeah, maybe you move him in the guard and let him compete there. But I like it a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense from a Packers perspective, and he hits a lot of the thresholds that they really look for in players.
I agree. Yeah, and I don't know that it comes down to he can't play left tackle, so Rasheed Walker does. I think that unless he is just significantly better than Rasheed Walker at left tackle, it makes sense to shift him around. But I do agree that you start there because I don't see Rasheed Walker moving around. He might move over to right, but he's certainly not going inside. Whereas, if they're even the same, it's like, shoot, let's see what this guy can do at guard, where it's like, let's just leave Rasheed Walker where he's at and hope he keeps getting better.
Yeah,
I think that's probably how it plays out. But yeah, I look for him to move all over the line. Probably not center, especially with Monk now. But yeah, left or right, tackle or guard. I think that he'll move around based on what's needed. Certainly, injuries always have a way of dictating these things. But ideally, I think you want him slotting in as, he loses out to the left tackle battle. He goes to right guard, maybe right tackle, depending on what's going on out there with Zach Tom and the center position. Again, with Monk, I think that looks a little bit different now. I think last time we talked after the first three rounds, we're thinking, okay, now you got Morgan here, maybe Zach Tom does shift into center. Morgan goes out to right. You got Walker at left. But now with Monk, he's played center.
Yeah.
He certainly is going to be interior, not a tackle. So that's an interesting one, and I think that's where it all boils back down to what Goot was saying, which is the best five. And instead of trying to project and say, all right, look, you got to fit in this part if you're going to make it the best five. Say, it's kind of like the scene, in The Dark Knight with the Joker where, he breaks the pool stick, drop it down. We'll see. Let him duke it out. But you're going to get the best product from that.
Yeah. And I think Rasheed Walker, he did a lot of good things the last, 4 or 5 games of the season, but he was up and down a lot too. I mean, there's a reason why Yash at one point took a couple starts from him, and then they were rotating.
Yeah,
he was inconsistent. He got better later on in the year, and I'll give him that. But it doesn't hurt to give him competition. And if he proves he's better than Jordan Morgan, awesome. Then leave him at left tackle and find another spot for Jordan Morgan.
Well,
but
that's what I think they expect the competition to do, is to force a little bit more consistency, have a little bit more of a sense of urgency, because you got somebody right up on your butt, man. He wants your job. But yeah, so I what the big win of all of this is whatever the best five is, it got better after this draft. There's no doubt about that. The best five got better. There's definitely a few guys whose seat is hot now. I'm sure Myers is one of those. Any of the guys that have been floating through the right guard position, Sean Ryan, our other boy Royce Newman, all of those guys on notice, because you've got 2 guys who can take your job out there right now. So yeah, it's very interesting to me. But I love the Jordan Morgan pick. I think it makes the best five better. However it shakes out, it's better because he's on it.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then our next guy, Adrian Cooper. I'm a big fan of this pick. Really love the attitude this guy plays with. My first thoughts when I started watching him is he's just mean. He plays mean. He's that guy that you just don't want to line up across from. It's like, dang, this guy's going to make my day long. I love it. I think him next to Quay Walker is a really, really fun pick. Love the value of where they got him. And those are the things that I think make Goot and separate him from his peers a little bit. It's hard to evaluate GMs and who's better and who's worse, but certainly if you're paying attention to some of the finer things, him going and moving back 4 spots to get the guy who, now we don't know if he's going to take Cooper DeJean or not, but Cooper DeJean off the board, Cooper was probably the pick. Yeah, I think it's fair to assume that was the pick. That was the guy, and there was probably another 1 or 2 guys there that they're okay with having to end up with going back 4 spots if Cooper goes. But I believe that he was the pick. So going off and getting a 5 and a 6 for him, just to take him later, is just brilliant because we've seen what Goot can do with a 5 and a 6. That's Dontavian Wicks and our boy Carl Brooks. I got Carl Brooks, right?
Yeah.
Getting all my different picks last year mixed up. But, yeah, that's Dontavian Wicks and Carl Brooks right there. So for simply moving back 4 picks and taking the guy you were going to take anyway. So very, very interesting. We don't know, obviously, if those same guys, the 5 and 6 pick he picked up, will turn out as well as Wicks and Brooks seemingly have. But the point is you give yourself that potential, and those are the things that Goot he seems to always be looking for, and I'm not sure other GMs are quite as intent on that. But either way, love the pick. I think he makes the defense better. It gives Hafley another tool to work with. But what do you think, man?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you there. I think they're going to be a lot more athletic and a lot faster in the middle of the field at linebacker between Quay and Adrian Cooper and however, Hafley wants to play it. But they got 2 really good athletes at linebacker now. I love Cooper. Like you said, he's aggressive. He'll attack the line of scrimmage. He's really fast. He's really athletic, and he 34-inch arms on a linebacker. That's pretty. He's got longer arms than our first round pick at tackle. So that's pretty cool. I think the athletic ability that he brings with Walker there's the potential there for those guys to be flying all over the place, which will be great. And, they can cover a lot of ground. I thought he was the best linebacker, off-ball linebacker in the draft. And for them to get him, very happy about that pick. It makes a lot of sense. He's, again, he's a Packer kind of pick. I'm with you there. I think there's going to be a huge difference when we see him on the field compared to what we saw on the field last year from Devondre Campbell. No offense to Devondre. I know he was hurt at times, but you could see he's lost a step or two. The way Cooper can fly around, I think there's going to be a noticeable difference. And now it's up to Hafley and the coaches there to really unlock what Cooper can do and what Quay Walker. Like, you have to don't fit them into a scheme, fit your scheme around what those guys can do and their athletic ability, because they have some special athletic abilities. Now you have to go and do it as football players together, in tandem together. But very excited for them to take Cooper. Again, we saw him mocked a million times to the Packers, I feel like.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of sense. It wasn't a surprise, but it's a really good pick and one that I'm very excited to see.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And comment from Fantasy Football Insiders. Goody said he had already decided to move back in the second, a few picks prior to 41. For sure, I heard that as well. And the way that I take that is, again, he probably had a handful of guys that he's okay with getting any one of those guys, with the idea that he can get another 5th and 6th. So he may even be thinking in that handful of guys, Cooper DeJean might have been his favorite, but he's still willing to make that move back because he could still get another guy like an Adrian Cooper and pick up 2 other potential impact players. So at the end of the day, it seems like that's how they navigate those trades. There has to be a grouping of players that they're willing to just get one of those guys. I think if you're going to trade back beyond something like that, the evaluation of the trade becomes totally different. But yeah, good point though on that one. Fantasy Football Insiders, thanks for jumping in with us. But yeah, overall, love the pick. Love how they navigated this one and pulled it off, and it's gonna be really exciting to see how that 5 and 6 turn out. And we'll get to them in just a minute. But the next pick we get to talk about here, Javon Bullard, safety from Georgia. My question about him is how often does it happen that a player wins MVP of a bowl game twice?
Probably not much.
I got to think that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
So
and a defensive player.
Yeah, a defensive player, no less.
I don't, maybe he was defensive MVP. I don't know how they do it, but either way, that's got to be rare.
I think technically he was defensive MVP of the national championship game, and then may have gotten MVP of the Peach Bowl. Somebody can correct us on that in the comments. But either way, the guy shows up when it matters. You know, that's one thing that I talked a little bit about before, actually with Cooper, because some of his best games were against like Alabama and in bowl games and stuff. You want players that show up when it matters. You know, some of these guys, they can get good PFF grades by having good games against nobodies. And then having really not great games the rest of the way. So you have to pay attention to when these guys are good, when do they show up, and how. Bullard is just a beast, man. And I think the Packers, we all got our first taste of him right there immediately after he hung up his phone. I'm a effing Packer.
Yeah, his reaction was awesome.
Oh, my God. Give me that energy every Sunday. Give me that energy every day. But, yes, like that is the energy I want on the defensive side of the football for the Green Bay Packers on Sundays. Are you kidding me? That guy is electric. He plays that way. One comp that I liked that was floating around some of the smaller Packers Twitter circles was Bob Sanders. Really liked that idea. Hated that Bob Sanders had such struggles with health because he was a monster at safety when he was on the field. Yeah. So anybody that doesn't remember Bob Sanders, go ahead and check out his highlights. They're a lot of fun. But, yeah, if he turned out to be a healthy Bob Sanders, you just won. Like, that's a win. That's a big win. So,
absolutely.
You know, especially with Xavier McKinney next to him and some pretty healthy, valuable backups there as well that we'll get to. But what are your thoughts on Bullard, man?
Yeah, I love him. He's super aggressive, really good tackler. You mentioned, playing in big games. He played in a lot of big games.
He did.
At Georgia over the years, and he showed up in those big games on a dominant defense. We know how the Packers like to take Georgia defensive players, but there's a reason for that because they groom them so well, coming from Kirby Smart's system to the NFL. So, yeah, it's funny because his measurements size-wise, he kind of reminds you of Savage, but plays a much different game than Darnell Savage. He's more attacking. He's more aggressive. I think he's got more versatility than what Savage ever showed. And I keep coming back to Goody mentioned it, LaFleur mentioned it, Patrick Moore, who is assistant director of scouting for him, he had a press conference, he mentioned it. And it was versatility to play nickel. They all brought up nickel with Bullard. So I wonder, I think he's definitely going to be a safety, and they're paying Keyshawn Nixon to be the nickel, but I think Keyshawn Nixon has some competition at least, and you wonder how Hafley's going to deploy all these guys, that there may be times where he is the nickel cornerback and Nixon's not on the field. But that's interesting because he spent 2022 primarily playing nickel and then going back to more of a traditional safety in 2023, and he was really good doing both of them. So he's their interchangeable, versatile piece that they wanted next to McKinney. Goody said that's what they wanted. He's exactly that, and a real exciting player. And God, I hope his good tackling at Georgia, I hope that translates to the NFL because it's been awful as far as safeties go with their tackling. Can we bring somebody down? And he does that.
Well, I think that's a common theme amongst all the guys they picked, really. But quick comment from Michael Cooper here. Bob Sanders played with reckless abandon. He was a beast. Absolutely agree with that, Michael. Appreciate you jumping in with us, man. He was a beast. And Bullard, he looks like he plays with that similar mentality. Now, word of caution, Clay Matthews was like that. And I think that style of play can lead to injuries, right? Because these guys just sling their body all over the place in an effort to make some of these plays, and that's sometimes going to result in injury. So hopefully we're over here lighting all of our prayer candles for Javon Bullard to stay healthy with that mean attitude, because we'd love to see it. We'd absolutely love to see it. But, yeah, great pick. I think, it addresses kind of what we were talking about before. Where last season, Mike Daniels brought it up. Like, hey, man, the league thinks this defense is soft. That's been going around for a while. The guys they brought in here, including Bullard, I think they changed that attitude real quick, if there were any doubts. And honestly, the guys that are there, I'm not crossing any of them. I think they're all pretty tough when they need to be. And now that they've got a coach that they can all rally behind, I think it's going to be exciting to see them all do it at once. But that's a different conversation. Bullard, very exciting. Very excited to see how he fits into all of this. Marshawn Lloyd, speaking of exciting, this one for me was kind of off the radar. He's not one that I really focused on when we were looking at running backs. Not for any reason to say he's not good or not a fit for the Packers. He was one of those, like, yeah, he's pretty good. It was kind of easy to overlook him. But going back and looking at his highlights and just some of the games that he played well in, what I really enjoy about Marshawn Lloyd is he's got good vision. He's got good instincts. He's not necessarily the home run that like a Jalen Wright would be, but that guy is going to rip off chunk yards that are going to absolutely infuriate a defense. And he's gonna and a lot. And I've heard comps to Aaron Jones, and I want to be careful with that. But one of the things that I do see that he's similar to Aaron Jones is he sees holes where other running backs do not see holes. And that's one of those things that's very hard to coach. It's very hard to make that happen if they don't have that. Aaron Jones might be one of the best at it, because he sees just a sliver of a gap, knows he can get through there, and he's got daylight on the other side. Marshawn Lloyd is similar. He's looking around, and he has very good field vision. He sees gaps where other guys probably don't. And he's an athlete. He's a heck of an athlete. He will rip off some runs.
Absolutely.
Good acceleration. He gets going quick. You see him a lot of times creating distance between him and the guys that are in pursuit. I just think that his top-end speed is probably not enough that you're going to see him go for all sorts of crazy, 40, 50-yard touchdown runs in the NFL. But, man, he's going to frustrate defenses by getting those first down runs a lot like Aaron Jones did, where he's getting 10 to 15 yards at a time, and you can't figure out how to stop it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Lloyd? I got kind of excited there.
No, he's one of my favorite players, maybe the favorite player of me from this draft class to watch now. Like, I'm really excited to see him. I do see explosiveness in his game, maybe not Aaron Jones explosiveness, and I think he's got the ability to make people miss. I think where we're going to see the difference is when it was Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. If Aaron Jones came out of the game, Dillon was a completely different back. In some ways, that's good, but you lost that explosiveness. You lost that ability to, make people miss in the open field, to potentially rip off a long run. It didn't happen much. Now when Josh Jacobs comes out, whether it's, if it's Dillon number 2 or whatever, when you bring Lloyd in the game, you're still going to have that ability to create an explosive play. Not to the level, I'm not going to compare him to Aaron Jones and what he did, but I just think there's more of a similarity to Jacobs and Jones in Lloyd's game than there was like A.J. Dillon to Jones. Dillon, kind of what you're getting. You're getting 3 yards in a cloud of dust,
Mm-hmm.
He can give you more than that at times, but you weren't expecting or going to get the big time plays. And I think Lloyd has that ability. And it's a really nice compliment to Josh Jacobs. And for whatever it's worth, Daniel Jeremiah had him as his top running back in the entire draft. So, maybe that means something, maybe it doesn't, who knows, but it's just, it's a nice point to have with him, a nice, compliment that he got. I like him. I think it's, I like that they didn't go for another really, he's 220, so he's not small, but I like that they didn't go for another bruiser like Dillon. They don't need that.
Yeah.
And I also didn't expect them to go for a smaller back just because generally they don't do that.
Yeah.
I think he's got real nice ability to, maybe not in 2024, but down the road, to kind of be like a 1B running back with Jacobs.
Yeah, I agree. And Fantasy Football Insider's jumping back in with this Lloyd comps to Ken Walker and DeAndre Swift. Not bad comps. Be okay with that. Those are some fine NFL running backs right there, and elite acceleration and burst. That's what I see too when I watch him. He gets up to his top speed quick.
Yes.
He gets on his horse and he goes, and that's fun to watch, man. That can, like I said, be very frustrating to a defense, especially one that's gassed from chasing the rest of this offense around all day. So yeah, totally agree with that. We got our showers jumping back in with us. A prime Eddie Lacy. Okay, it's a different perspective, but go watch again with that in mind. You'll see it a bit smaller, a bit more speed, but it's there. Fair enough. Definitely not the same type of athlete, I don't think. And, I know that, Eddie Lacy, he eventually, that picture is floating around and, he got called big and all this stuff. Like, I get it. He wasn't always like that. Like, he was coming out of Alabama. He was a pretty good athlete. So, I'm not totally discounting that, but I would say Marshawn Lloyd is a better athlete than Eddie Lacy. But the explosion and the burst, I'm with you there.
It's
Definitely
there.
with you there.
Yeah.
And then don't think his top end speed is great, but don't care about that. Yeah, I was saying that too. It doesn't necessarily matter all that much in the NFL. There's not a lot of guys these days that are just running away from defenses for an 80-yard touchdown. It's just not happening as much. You got a couple of receivers who can do that. But as far as running backs doing that, that doesn't happen quite as often these days. It still happens. Not saying it doesn't happen. But what you really want from your running back that is just going to break the back of a defense is a guy like what we're talking about here with Marshawn Lloyd that is going to just rip off 10 to 15 yards at a time with, before a defense even knows what hit him, and that's because he's coming in as sort of this fresh legs, change of pace type guy after you've had two tight ends going vertical on you all day. You've had Christian Watson going horizontal on you all day and then vertical. And you got Josh Jacobs beating up on you. I mean, this offense has a lot of weapons right now that defenses they're going to be going cross-eyed trying to deal with. And so when Marshawn Lloyd is coming in behind all of that and they've got to deal with that burst and that explosion, talk about sealing games. That's a dude who's going to get you that first down at the end of the game when you need it. So that's what I see. But we're not professional scouts over here. We're just fans over here getting excited about the guys that we got on our team. All right. Tyron Hopper, moving on here. Linebacker, Missouri, not a popular pick. Most Packers fans are pretty excited about the draft in general, but if I'd have to say that there's a common least favorite pick, this is probably one of them. I like the pick. I again, one thing I said earlier, with these picks, you have to project, right? You have to also try to understand what you think these guys are going to do at the next level with the supporting cast around them in the NFL, with NFL-level coaching. And they see these things. They see the things in college that hold them back and go, we can fix that or we can't. With Hopper, what I really like, and this I think is also kind of a developing theme with this class, is he seems to have really good instincts. Like when he's making a play, he's almost like seeing it as fast as it's happening, and he's so that's where I think what's probably holding him back is he's probably guessed wrong in some cases and it looks really bad. But when he's in there, like he gets in there fast, he gets in there like hard. He comes in there and really has the ability to completely blow up an edge, and I think that's probably what they see in him. Is this guy who can just come from that linebacker spot and completely blow up the edge and control that edge that as get outside. But I like it. I like the pick, and I have enough trust in this scouting department to say, if you see something in him, great. I can't wait to see what it is. Probably special teams value in there as well. And I believe, call me on it if I'm wrong, I believe he was a team captain.
Probably.
A lot
I'm
of
not
team
sure.
captains in this
They had a
class.
ton of them, so yeah.
So
Sure he
anyway,
was.
what are your thoughts on Hopper?
Yeah, this was one that it surprised me where they took him. But he was a top third or a 30 visit up to Green Bay, so they definitely were interested in him. I just didn't expect third round with him. His tape in 2022 was a lot better than 2023. So whatever the difference was year to year, I don't know. But they have a little bit of a history of having some success with that. Jordan Love's tape was better the year before he came out than the year he came out. Dontavian Wicks last year. Kalen King, who we're going to talk about shortly, same thing there. So, like, sometimes these guys, for whatever reasons, system change, role change, coaching change, whatever it may be, there's a drop off. But you see, if you look at the entire picture of what they've done in college, you see a really good player. And they definitely see something there with him. I think going back to 22, there are flashes in 23. It's just not as consistent with his game. But I think he's got decent size. I think he is probably the competition for Isaiah McDuffie. I mean, he's a much different player than obviously Quay Walker, than Adrian Cooper, who they took. But I think he can push McDuffie, whether that's next year or down the line. So, again, listen to what Goody says. He wanted to add numbers at linebacker, and he did that. He took two guys. Whether you like Hopper or not, that's fine. It's one that I'm not sure about either, but it gives him another guy in competition to push McDuffie, and to compete with Cooper as well, because he's a rookie walking through the door. So, yeah, I think there's things in his game. He's obviously got a long way to go, but you see the flashes, you see the aggressiveness to attack the line of scrimmage and make plays. You see it in the run game. I don't know if he's going to be quite as good in the passing game, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to get you killed in the passing game where you just can't put him on the field. But he's got to put it together, and the consistency is what is concerning. But there's something there, and if they see something, I'm fine with it in the third round. Take a shot on him.
Yeah, and Rev Trev jumping in with us. Welcome, sir. Happy to have you. What about Hopper do you actually like? What are his strengths? Rev didn't get the pick at all. Fair enough, man. That's what I'm saying. I think it was probably the least popular pick in this class that Goop made.
Go back and watch him in 22. It's better than 23.
Yeah, and I also think that you have to give some room for these guys to be making a pick for what's going on between the ears, right? Not every guy is your elite athlete or your elite production guy that had all the crazy sacks or something. Sometimes your guy, he's just savvy. He did the right things at the right times that you wanted to see. He's, again, like a team captain type, and I see he does have the C on his chest. So sometimes it has a lot more to do with that. I'm, again, seeing that he's a team captain, I'm willing to believe that this is probably that has to do with his character, with his football IQ, and his ability to sort of, just lift the entire room. Maybe not even as a starter, but just as a, lifting the floor and pushing these guys. When you've got these guys that are in backup roles that are high character guys, they push the guys in front of them. You can't slack off if the dude behind you is getting after it all the time. And that's what he seems like to me. He's just a very high energy dude. I mean, again, the plays you see him make, they're very savvy plays. There's one play that has been going around where he chases a running back down from behind. So he's beat by this running back by, I think, like 10 yards. Demonstrates the athleticism to go chase this dude down, and then he punches the ball out. Like, that's situational awareness that's pretty rare, and it sounds simple, but it's frustrating how much it doesn't happen. Like, most guys in that position where you're just trying to get this guy down, you're coming from behind, you're not having the awareness to also go ahead and punch that ball out. Let's go ahead and make this bad play a good one. it's those types of things that I think that the Packers see and go, oh, yeah, we can work with that guy. We can correct his consistency, or we can correct this technique or whatever it is. That's what I see, to be fair, Rev. But I'm not over here dying on the hill, right? Could be a bad pick. This could be another Oren Burks level pick, and hopefully it's not.
Could be.
But could be. Those things happen. Goot's not going to be 100%. We want him to be. He's not going to be 100%, though. But, yeah, going back over here real quick to a point about Marshawn Lloyd, 7.1 yards per carry last season and 25 bench reps. That caught my attention, too. I appreciate you calling that out, Rev. 25 reps on the bench is big. Those are big numbers. But, yeah, also 7.1 yards a carry is big. That I felt didn't get as much attention as maybe it should have in the pre-draft process. But, it's just kind of a weird thing what's going on with running back right now. The position being devalued in the NFL and all that. Let's see here. We got some other comments rolling in from we got Hopper pick, I guess, is a go forward downhill attacking type. Exactly. He is. And if you can tell him where to attack and get him there, get him going to the right places, that can be a valuable asset.
Different style than Cooper, but yeah, you're downhill attacking.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, I wonder if guys like him and King were dinged up or being asked to do something different last year compared to 22. One thing, and I'm glad you bring that up, I don't know that it's even that, but one thing that I think we need to leave room for is how NIL is affecting all these teams and all the transfer portal stuff and all that. I mean, these guys are almost playing on a new team every year now, whether they move or not, which is sort of strange. So I definitely leave room for some sort of less than obvious stuff like that to be a factor here when you see great football players become less great, one year after another. There's a lot of circumstances that go into it. They're young men. They're growing. They're, going through a lot of things. Could be asked to do something different. I know that's definitely the case with some of the O-linemen. You see a guy be asked to do left tackle 1 year, right tackle the next. So those are things to keep an eye on with some of these. But I don't hate the Hopper pick. I think it added good depth. And, if they really had that high of an opinion of him, then I look forward to seeing hopefully that plays out. But now, after we said we weren't going to spend too much time on those guys, that was a good conversation, though. Our next guy, Evan Williams. This pick I really liked, and this was one that we did sort of see creeping up. He was a visit, wasn't he? He was definitely when did we have him on a combine meeting?
I'm sure. I mean, they met with him for sure. I don't know if he. I don't think he was a 30 visit, but they met with him.
Yes, combine visit or combine meeting. So they had their eyes on him. I like him. Going back and watching some of his film, he's he looks like a very good safety. I didn't get a chance to go like really in depth and look at him to pick apart maybe some of his flaws or weaknesses. So by all means, jump in the comments, guys. Let us know what you think about Evan Williams if you've got some critiques. But I really like the pick. And one thing that I really, really like about this and the other guy that we'll talk about in a minute is these guys have been preparing to play against Caleb Williams for years. So I love that. I think that's 4D chess type stuff. Like you're picking up some guys, especially now later in the draft, right? This isn't even at the top of the draft. You're getting some value picks here. You're getting a guy in Evan Williams who, as a safety, has been preparing to go against quarterback Caleb Williams for, the last 3 years? Is it 2 years he's been at USC? I can't even remember.
2 years.
Either way, yeah, a couple years. That's a head start, right? Don't undersell that. That is definitely a head start. Same thing for our guy Oladapo out of Oregon State. These guys have been preparing to play against Caleb Williams. That's great. Like, they're going to see tendencies. They've been watching his film for years. They're going to know certain things that even the guys on the team now aren't going to be able to know. And the other thing is Marshawn Lloyd is going to know Caleb Williams pretty well. So, your rival's quarterback, rookie quarterback at that, he'll be no stranger to the Packers. I don't think there will be a whole lot of surprises that he will be able to have for them. Things can change, offensive schemes can, you can bake some stuff in. I'm not saying, they're going to know everything about him, but having that level of knowledge join your defense and your offense for Lloyd, that's good stuff right there. Like, that really is good stuff. There's value in that, and knowing that, understanding that. Who is the individual? How does he prepare? What are his tendencies? What are his weaknesses? How did he beat you before, and how can you make sure that doesn't happen again? All that kind of stuff. But I said a lot there, man. What do you think of Evan Williams?
I like him. He wasn't a guy that we talked about a whole lot in the pre-draft process, so I had to go back and do more research on him once they took him. But he's got some versatility, similar to Javon Bullard. They're different players, but they both have versatility. I think Williams can probably play up high. He can probably play a little bit of the slot. Solid player. He was at Fresno State for 4 years, and he could have stayed there, and he wanted to go play for a big time program at Oregon and move up and play stronger competition and be seen, I guess, a little more at Oregon than he was at Fresno State. And he did it and was one of their best players. So yeah, real nice football player. He got the Sam Seal signed off on him, the West Coast scout, who's now a national scout, I guess, but longtime West Coast guy who's been heavily involved in a lot of the guys they've taken from out West over the years. He liked them and signed off on them. That's good enough for me, but I see versatility in his game. I think he's a really nice, potential number 3 safety, but, a guy that you can find a role for and be interchangeable with the other safeties. And again, brings competition to that room, which they needed numbers, they needed depth, and they needed competition. So he brings all that. Yeah. I think he's a nice pick, and I like him.
Yeah, I agree, man. I totally agree with all of that. Fantasy Football Insiders here. Hopper has an excellent sideline to sideline mobility with high motor, relentless pursuit. Yeah, he's a hair on fire kind of guy. Appreciate that there. And then R with a comment, likes to honestly say we got 3 of the best 4 safeties in the draft. I sure hope so. I think so too. But you did not want Bishop and Hicks. You were probably in the minority on that, R. Thought Nubbin was overrated. I also did think he was overrated. We'll see how that one plays out. I was not bummed out about missing out on Nubbin at all. These are real football players, not just RAS gym warriors. Yeah, that's what it seems like. These, the safeties they got, they seem like, football player, instinct type guys. Instinct seems like a common theme amongst these guys. All of them, you would say that they're good football players. They're instinctive football players. They fly around the field, and you need that, right? I think one of the reasons why Joe Barry's defense was so unpopular is it forced the players to sort of have paralysis by analysis, right? They're thinking too much about, well, we do this if this, or that if this, and and you heard a little bit of that from Devondre Campbell on one of his social media rants where it's, he's wanting to just, fill the run gap, and he's got to wait for a safety to come fill the run gap. And so he's got to do this other thing. So when you're having to do that type of mental gymnastics on the field, you're not going to play your best. So not only does the coach want to let these guys fly around and just be able to react without having to think hard, he's also, it looks like they're going after the players that's their natural way of playing, right? These aren't just your fundamentalists that are out there, your technique perfectionists. These guys are out there playing kind of with their instincts. They're playing with their heart a little bit. They're sort of freelancing a little bit, but in doing that, they're able to play with a level of intensity that I think we are all very, very hungry for. So, yeah, I agree with you there, R, on your assessment. And then Fantasy Football Insiders coming back with us with Evan Williams was a Senior Bowl standout, a high-character guy, also outstanding contributor on special teams. No doubt about it. I think they're kind of rebuilding the special teams here, too. You have to. You've been one of the worst for too long. We've got to figure something out there.
Yeah, they got a few guys that should help there, we hope.
Yeah. So, yeah, love the pick overall. Very excited to see how he ends up fitting in, but it seems like there's a lot of opportunity there for Evan Williams to come in and probably be impactful year one. And this one is our next pick here, Jacob Monk. This is actually one of my more, I guess, favored or just I really like this pick. I found it pretty humorous that Packers Twitter and Packers fans, we were all on the Barton train, man. We were getting Barton no matter what. And right next to Barton on that film, man, is Jacob Monk doing exactly what the Packers O-linemen do. So I just kind of found it funny that there weren't more of us that saw this guy coming. He is a goot guy. He's a versatile offensive lineman. When you watch him, he's strong. He pushes guys around. He's got good balance. He doesn't ever look lost. We saw some lost-looking offensive linemen for the Packers last year a little bit. So there's that. He doesn't ever look lost, but I like the guy. When I hadn't heard of him until they made the pick, wasn't on my radar at all. And then I went back and looked at him, and it took me about 5 minutes to go, holy crap, good guy. Right there, right in front of us, and nobody was mocking him. So very, very much I like this pick. I think he adds competition to the interior O-line, whether it's center, right guard, probably not left guard. I think Jenkins has that locked down. We don't need him to go anywhere. But definitely just raises that whole room right there. What about you, man? What do you think?
Yeah, he wasn't a guy that was on my radar either before the draft, but guard center versatility, another guy that'll be able to move around. And I think he immediately comes in and provides competition and depth up there. Hopefully he can take Royce Newman's roster spot. And who knows, maybe he's somebody that's going to push Josh Myers or Sean Ryan at right guard. But yeah, I mean, if you look at his body type and just what he looks like he should be a center, and maybe it could very well be his ultimate position. But I think he's played a lot of football, started a lot of games at Duke, smart player, better athlete than you realize when you see his testing numbers. So he's going to be that versatile, swing backup interior offensive lineman, kind of like Elaine Taylor used to be. But yeah, I think it's a really nice day 3 pick, and wouldn't surprise me at all if this guy's a starter for the Packers down the road somewhere, whether that's at right guard, center, wherever. Like he's almost one of those guys that I don't think a lot of people are going to talk about after the draft, because he's an interior lineman taken in the 5th round, and nobody had heard of this guy before the draft. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if, he ends up being one of the better players from it. It's kind of like a Packer way of doing things. He's a 3rd-day offensive lineman. We know the success they've had over the years finding these type of guys. So, yeah, I really like it. Immediately, I think he provides depth, but I think down the road, he's got a chance to be a starter.
Yeah, I totally agree. It just has that feel about him. He's that kind of guy. You look at him, he looks like he's gonna make your day hell in the weight room. He just looks mean. He looks like he's just ready to go. Hard work's just not hard. Give him more. But I could be projecting things on him. I don't know the guy. But I do like the pick. We go back and watch the tape. He moves well. He pushes guys around. Like I said, he's got good balance. He doesn't get knocked around much. You don't see him on the ground much. Which is a good thing with O-linemen. You don't want to see O-linemen on the ground. So, very excited about that pick. Next here we have Ketan Oladapo. This was one that Packers Twitter was really asking for. A lot of mock drafts had this name on it. Kind of along the lines of what we had said before. He's another one. He had the C on his chest. Captain. Probably going to be an impact special teams player, but he is definitely going to increase the competition in that safety room. I wouldn't believe for a second, and it's funny, you got Oregon and Oregon State coming in here. These guys are going to be duking it out from day one. Built-in little rivalry there as far as how they're competing against each other. And again, 2 guys that have been scouting Caleb Williams to play against him for a couple years now. So I like it. I think it's a very smart pick for a lot of reasons. and I love where they were able to get him. And I'd like to agree with Art that we got 3 of the top 4 safeties in the draft here.
Let's hope so. And he was a guy that came up for a 30 visit as well. I believe it was Senior Bowl. He's more of a safety. I don't think he has got the versatility of Bullard or Matthews, but he's got really good size. He can hit. He can tackle well. There's some good film of him one-on-one coverage, making pass breakups. Seems like a smart player, and he's an attacking kind of safety. I think he'll be better closer to the line of scrimmage and moving forward than covering a lot of ground in the back end. He's not going to be kind of like that deep, roving center field safety, I don't think. But yeah, I really like it, and I like where they got him at. I think he could be a fun player to watch, and I think just his immediate role will be special teams and just providing competition to that room overall. But yeah, I think there's a role for him in the defense at some point, whether that's as a rookie or not. We'll see, however he performs in preseason and camp. But yeah, really nice pick for where they got him at in the draft.
Yeah, and he was the 5th highest graded safety in PFF last season. So I mean, this is no kind of back of the room slouch here. Like this guy's legit, and I think it was an interesting safety class. Certainly polarizing as far as the opinions that were flying around about some of the guys at the top for sure. But I really like it. I think that this guy comes in and makes your special teams better, increases competition. That's what they've been saying they want to do, and I think this was a nail on the head type of pick for that. Real quick though, back to Monk. Fantasy Football Insider says Monk was the Duke team captain. There we go, with another team captain. Lots of team captains. You want to put that on your criteria for next year's mock drafts and all that stuff. Elite Ross score, Scout Barton for guard center, come away with Monk instead. Yeah, I mean that's what seems like it happened. I love it. I love the pick, and I think it's funny that we overlooked that guy, and he's right there on this film of this one guy that we just can't get enough of. And then another one here from R. Ola is a Balls pick. When we already had the others, a great value there. Yeah, I mean, that's where Goot said he was going to do this, and this is where we probably should pay attention a little more, take him more seriously. But he's shown for one that he wants to do this. To the 2 tight ends before, the receivers, the way he was drafting them before. He's not going to just come away with one player at a position of need, and that's where I said this earlier in the podcast here. It's interesting because it almost felt like during the Ted Thompson era, at times he would take a player at a position that wasn't a position of need just to prove that he's not drafting for need. Like there were times where it's just like, dang, man, like you just don't need that guy. Could you not have taken this other guy who looks pretty good at a position of need?
Yeah.
And now I don't know that they've just drastically said, all right, now we're only going to draft for need, but they've identified, hey, we have a need. Let's not just take one swing at this thing, and I talked about this before too. When you extrapolate that idea across 10 plus years of drafting, all of a sudden, compared to your peers, you're doing pretty darn good, right? So, I talked about the example before, the Packers compared to the Bears and their drafting over the last, I think it was 12 years. And their hit percentage was roughly the same, but the Packers had drafted twice as many players. So they came away with a lot more starters. And a lot more impact players, and then that was almost a microcosm of this draft was a microcosm of that, where the Bears have 5 picks. I guess they started with 4, came away with 5, used one of them on a punter.
They're going to need him a lot, so
really rebuild
makes
the
sense.
franchise there. Anyway, yeah, in a rebuilding year, they go in with 4 picks, come away with 5, I guess, but. And then the Packers are over here. They've got 11, and Goot's like, I want 14. At one point, has 13. He's like, geez, this guy. It's never enough for him. And it ultimately lands up with 11, which going into the draft, I would tell you there was not room for 11 draft picks on this roster. I think I'm wrong. I think there's room for all of these draft picks on this roster. So ultimately, and I know we're supposed to be talking about Oladapo here. I like it. I like the pick. I like the way the strategy played out for them, taking multiple swings at the position. It just seems like a really good strategy so far. And we've seen this before where you take one swing at a position of need, and well, if you miss on that, well, now you're back to square one. So yeah, love that pick, and I think at the very least, it's a good boost to your special teams. Couple comments here. We got R back in here. I do that when I mock draft, and I don't do that because that'll never happen. I don't know what that was in reference to, but I'm probably guilty of that too. And then Oladapo was PFF highest graded safety run defender. Yes. Oregon State team captain, 2-time All Pac-12. Thank you for that, Fantasy Football Insiders. The theme here, a lot of team captains coming out of this class. So just keep an eye on that. I think that you're adding high character guys, you're adding leaders, you're only going to benefit from that. These guys are all going to push each other, and competition breeds success. And great point here by R. Say goodbye to Benny Sapp and Anthony Johnson. I don't know about Anthony Johnson. Hold on that one, but maybe Zane Anderson. Now that the safety room is a strength versus a glaring weakness. Yeah, Benny Sapp and Zane Anderson are probably gone. I don't know. I think Anthony Johnson might hang in there. He's a big question mark, and he's still there. Obviously, they're not letting him go. He's just a second-year guy now. But very interesting. That's an interesting one. If he comes out and emerges as a leader in this room, look at you now. Now you got some serious competition in that room.
Yeah, the safeties that they're bringing, the three guys, are just it provides immediate competition and it boosts the depth. And yeah, I mean, you're probably right about Benny Sapp, and maybe he's right about Anthony Johnson Jr. Who knows? That'll be that's a training camp preseason game battle that we'll say. But at the very least, nobody is assured of a spot, or at least nobody returning is assured of a spot. So it increases your competition there and increases your depth, which is absolutely what was needed. They completely rebuilt the safety room. We were trotting out Jonathan Owens and Darnell Savage. So,
well, we all had
Rudy
high
Ford's gone.
Darnell Savage. We all
but by the last couple of years, it wasn't working out. It was time to move on. So they did the right thing, which was completely tearing down the safety room, letting the free agents that were in that room leave, and replacing them with one of the best safeties in the league, McKinney, and a draft class with 3 promising players.
Yeah, no doubt. And R says he doesn't hate Johnson. Thought it was a good pick late. Yeah, I agree. I think you really need to see what you have there. And I'm. It seems like they intend to. I wouldn't put it past them to cut him. But I'm interested in seeing how he looks. He's
you gotta let it play out.
The most unknown player on this roster right now, aside from the rookies. But even then, maybe even still. But yeah, all right. So your next, speaking of unknowns, your next pick, Travis Glover, tackle out of, was it Georgia State?
Yeah.
Yeah, not Georgia State and Georgia Southern. I always get those two mixed up. Yeah. So this one, I don't have a lot to say. I haven't gotten to look at him a whole lot. Looks like good competition for the tackle room. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, he's a big dude. Played a lot of games at Georgia State. Left tackle there, probably going to be left tackle, right tackle. I don't know if he could be a guard. I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere. So he's probably just a tackle, but he's a project. But he's kind of maybe falls into that whole Josh Nyman, Caleb Jones kind of project guys that they bring along that have really good size and some traits, but they need a lot of work. And he needs a lot of work, but he's played a lot of football. And the Packers had said, I think Goody had made the point that they saw him in the postseason I think he went to the Hula Bowl, and then he might have went up to the Senior Bowl too, or Shrine Bowl, one or the other. But he went to 2 postseason games, and that's when they saw him against better competition and came away more impressed by him. And that's probably what led them to draft him where they did. So I think he's a project. He needs work, but he's another guy to bring in, and it's more, again, keep going back to it. It's more competition. So Caleb Jones, Luke Tenuta, they have competition with Jordan Morgan and now a Glover for a backup tackle role.
Well, Dillard. You know, they just signed
And Dillard as
but,
well. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
no guarantees he makes this roster at this point.
Right. And Glover may not make it. He very well could be on the practice squad, a guy that they were trying to develop again along the lines of what Yash was and what Caleb Jones has been.
Yeah.
But he's got size and he's got ability. He has a lot of experience there. So, yeah, it's 6th round pick. You're taking a shot at this point. It's a lottery ticket. So,
yeah,
he might be something, he might not. But beyond that, I'm not real familiar with his game.
Yeah. No, me either. But we'll keep diving in, and
yeah, absolutely.
Eventually you start getting murmurs about who's good, who's not. Mini camps will start showing some things. OTAs will start showing some things. Less so on the lines. They just kind of push each other around without pads on. But we'll start getting a little bit more familiar with some of these guys. The next one, Michael Pratt. I thought this one was really interesting because for me, outside of that top wave of quarterbacks in this class, he seemed like a next guy up as a kind of a sneaky sleeper candidate quarterback in this draft. Great size. It was like 6'3", 220. So big dude, good arm. Played at Tulane, and they outplayed Caleb Williams in a bowl game. So, I mean, interesting. I like it. We keep talking about competition. This brings good competition to the QB room. Certainly not for Jordan Love, I don't think, but definitely for Sean Clifford. And no guarantees that Sean Clifford doesn't hold down the job. I mean, he's pretty good. I certainly think that he's good enough to hold down QB2 against a rookie QB, but I thought this was a good way to do that, and there was some other feedback that was floating around out there that this was like the perfect place for Michael Pratt to land, develop, and then maybe become a potential asset for another team, kind of how the Packers used to do that, a la Matt Hasselbeck, Aaron Brooks, those types of guys. So what do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, again, you listen to what Goody said, and he talked about getting back to drafting quarterbacks a lot more. And so it's not a surprise they took a quarterback. I was just surprised. I thought Pratt would go a lot sooner on day 3 than in the 7th round.
Yeah,
so
I did too.
I love where they got him. And I agree with you. Beyond the top 6 quarterbacks who all went in the 1st round, I thought he was kind of like the next guy, or at least in the mix of being the next guy. So I was intrigued. And he was like, we didn't get too much into the quarterbacks, but he would have been the guy that I would have thought of as like, let's draft him and develop him as a backup. Like he just fit that. So yeah, again, he'll be competition for Sean Clifford, and maybe both of them make the team, but there's a possibility only one of them does, and it'll either push Clifford to get better or Pratt's going to take his job. What they've done in the past, and it's been a while since they've been able to do this, but they used to develop quarterbacks and be able to trade them off and get a draft pick. So maybe that's something that they do with Clifford or Pratt at some point, whether it's, right before the season in 2024, or if it's down the line, a year from now. But I like him. I think it's to get a quarterback in the 7th round. I think it's a good shot to take on him. He definitely has some really good tools that could be developed. So interested to see what he looks like in the preseason.
Yeah.
And it'll be a cool quarterback, to watch play in the 4th quarter or some of these preseason games to see what he looks like.
Yeah, not a boring quarterback to watch when we usually get into those yawn fest preseason games.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the Packers backups will be boring to watch. This could be a pretty fun preseason with the guys that they've got competing. Are coming back at us with a comment. Like the idea of the small school guys late. Personally hoping for the North Dakota State guys. Whatever. Current backup tackles or projects too. Dillard was horrid. Yes, he was. But they didn't bring him in for no reason, and I think the contract is pretty friendly. So there's pretty low risk there. Bring him in. He's a good athlete. Let all these guys duke it out and see who sticks and earns a spot and cut the others, And I think this year they've done things a little bit differently than they have in the past in certain ways. For example, signing a top-of-the-market free agent running back. That's one of the last moves I would have ever predicted the Packers to make. So, along that theme of doing things that, sometimes that they haven't done historically, I think you might see one of the draft picks get cut this year. It's possible. I think it's more possible this year than it has been in the past. Pratt could be one.
Yeah.
Glover could be one. You're just not sure. But yeah, I mean, you're getting to that point with this roster where it's like, this is going to be a competitive roster. Some guys are going to get cut that will get picked up by other teams. They won't just float around out there. So yeah, I thought this was an interesting pick, but more interesting than that, and maybe the most popular pick by now of the draft, Kalen King, man. We go off and in the 7th round get a cornerback that at the beginning of this draft cycle was being talked about as one of the top cornerbacks in this class. And we fortunately have a Penn State fan built in here with us. So, man, tell us the story about Kalen King.
Yeah, Kalen King, it's weird what happened to him in 2023 because you're right. This time last year, a lot of people were already talking up, the next wave of classes. And he was one of the top guys going into the season at corner. 2022, he was there with Joey Porter Jr., ended up being a Steelers 2nd-round pick. So they were the starting outside corners. Both had really good seasons. And it was kind of like King was the next in line. And it was like, can he get drafted higher than Porter did? And I think Porter was a high 2nd-round pick. And then for whatever reason, King's game just fell off. Now, I think it's been exaggerated a little bit that he had this terrible season. He wasn't terrible, but there was a big drop in his play, and it's really hard to go back and pinpoint why, just from a fan's perspective. But everybody that's scouted him, that's covered him, anything written about him, like nobody can really pinpoint why. It was the same system with the same coordinators. They had a really good defense. Nothing changed. He became the number 1 corner. I don't know why that would change something. He was seeing the same guys anyway. Basically, it wasn't like, he wasn't facing good receivers. He was. I know a lot of clips are out there of Marvin Harrison lighting him up. Marvin Harrison did that to a lot of people, but yeah. He couldn't cover Marvin Harrison. So, okay, but he had struggles beyond Marvin Harrison. And it's really strange because, again, they had a very good defense. Nothing changed. The system didn't change. The coaches didn't change what he was asked to do. Nothing changed. And his game just fell off. And then he didn't test well. And that to me was even a bigger red flag than him not having a good year, because Penn State guys test well. And sometimes they have guys that test better than they actually played on the field. They just get their guys ready for the combine, right? And then they go to the pros and they're not as good. They were just kind of a workout warrior. Yeah. He didn't test well and he didn't play well. And it's weird. Nobody can figure it out or pinpoint what happened, what the issue was. And from seeing him, I don't know. It's hard to say. But his game, it fell off by a pretty good margin in 2023. Yeah. To take the chance on him in the 7th round, fine. It's a 7th-round pick. It's
your second 7th-round pick,
right? And it's right at the end. It's a lottery ticket. It's honestly, it's not that valuable. At that point in the draft, you're picking somebody who you're probably we're going to try to sign as an undrafted guy, and instead of having to compete with other teams, you just pick them at that point. Right. It's worth a shot. The tools were there, and you hope that he's kind of this year's Dontavian Wicks. Wicks had it down 2020, or had a really good 2021 or 2020. Yeah, trying to remember. 2021, 22. Right, he was down the year he came out. Now with Wicks, there was a change in the scheme. There's a change in the coaching staff. With King, didn't have that. So what happened, and can you get him back to what he was in 2022? That's going to be the big question, but it's worth a shot. There is ability there. He's got decent size. I think he's strictly an outside corner at Penn State, but he could probably potentially play some nickel for you. He may not make the roster at all. I know some people are really high and saying he could be a starter down the road, and they really might have found, their next late round, hidden gem, their next Rasheed Walker or Carrington Valentine. I'm not ready to go there, but it's worth a shot because he did have it in him. For whatever reason, something changed. And maybe it's just a confidence issue. And that, he got beat early in the year and he never got his game back. I don't know. but it's worth taking a shot on. And at that point in the draft, I have no problem with it. But he could easily be cut, and we never hear from him again as far as the Packers go. I don't know. Just a really strange situation with him. Nothing off the field either, from what everybody knows. So I don't know why he fell off so much and why the testing numbers weren't good. But there was something there previous to it. So
Yeah,
I think that's what they're looking at is the previous versions of Kevin King or Kalen, not Kevin King, Kalen King, and hoping they can get that version of him.
there.
Yeah, hoping they can get the 22 version and not the 23 version.
Yeah, I mean, and so in terms of PFF grades, he had an 89 defensive PFF grade in 2022. That was 8th among all cornerbacks in the NCAA.
He was
and
really
then in
good.
2023, he had a 60. So that was, he really dropped off. But, I mean, nobody's perfect. And you certainly don't see a linear path to success all the time. It's probably less common that your path to success is linear. And you see players like Devondre Campbell did not have good PFF grades his first few years in the league, and then comes to the Packers and has an all-pro season. So, I mean, you can't rule it out. And when you're talking about a 7th-round pick, your second 7th-round pick, yeah, dude, roll the dice. Let's see what this guy's got, especially when he's surrounded by other guys that can lift him up, like Jair Alexander, those types of guys. I'm excited to see how this goes, and that's where I was saying before, were we disappointed, surprised that they didn't add at the cornerback position earlier, or maybe more frequently, add more picks to that position. And looking at it the way that we see it now, the guy that they did add, a Kalen King, who his potential is as high as any, in addition to that room being healthy, that room's as deep as any on the roster, and so I mean, the receivers.
I think you're banking on a lot of guys that haven't been healthy. Jair, Stokes, like those guys haven't been healthy, and so
I'm willing to
you're
believe
hoping
that the front office knows better than I do. And if they had concerns about that they would address those concerns through acquisition. I'm less concerned about Alexander than I am Stokes. Because it's such a big question mark. We don't know what Stokes what is it? But anyway, we also saw Carrington Valentine play really well. I'm very optimistic that he'll make that nice year 2 jump, especially with the coaching staff that they brought in. And I'm not out on Valentine either, so who knows what his year 2 jump could look like. But again, with a healthy room there, you've got 4 guys that if they're starting for you, it's not the end of the world. And when you put Kalen King in a group like that, I feel like that lifts him up. That gives him the best opportunity to shake off whatever was going on this last season and get back to his better form. I'm optimistic. I am optimistic in that area, but
I hope so. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah,
and the ability's there somewhere.
It is. All right, so R jumped in here with us. Kalen King's long speed is very suspect. Receivers seem to run away from him.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's a 6'1", and right now it's if you're not running a 4.3, you're not fast, which is kind of wild. Because a 4.4 is pretty stinking. 4.5 is fast. 4.4 is fast. But yeah, he 4.6. That's kind of tough. So we'll see. Hopefully, again, that's something that he can figure out. And then also Savage vibes. So much promise early on. What happened? We've seen the story before. Yeah, and you've seen it go both ways though. And again, when it's a 7th-round pick versus Savage being a 1st-round pick, the risk on that investment or whatever you want to call it is pretty low. If he doesn't pan out, he doesn't pan out. It's not the end of the world. And they've been good at finding other guys, these off-the-street DBs. You find a Rasul Douglas on a practice squad when you need one. So that's where I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. If they need to add a body to that room, they will. They've shown that. And they're not very bad at it. And then Acme Army swinging in, stud.
He's talking about me, I think.
I think he is talking about you. I think he is. He's not talking about Kalen King.
No. Hopefully, eventually.
Hopefully he is. Hopefully he's talking about both of you. And then so we agree. Hope he does get back to what he was. And,
Yes.
and you have to have an open mind that that's a possibility. You've seen the guy do it. You can't assume it's a fluke. There's all sorts of reasons why, especially for young men. He's just growing, developing. You just don't know. But you gotta like the situation that you're putting him in with the coaching and the leadership around him. I think you give him the best odds to find that better form. So there we have it. We have a few things. We've got our longest podcast ever. So this is the longest episode. Welcome to you crazies who have hung out with us. Appreciate y'all for being a part of this one. We got through our all of our draft picks, all 11 of them. So if you're mad that this went long, don't blame me. Blame Goot. He could have picked 14. He didn't. So we'd still be going if he did. Overall, though, very, very excited about this draft class. I like it. I like the way that it fell. I like the talent that's in there, the competition that's in there. Nobody gets everything they want. So, to the folks that had their hopes set up on, Cooper DeJean, and now your world has just been crumbled, we gotta be more flexible than that, adapt a little bit. Just have faith in Goot and this crew. They've done pretty well over the last few years, and if they think that DeJean and Barton were worth passing on, I'm willing to believe them. I don't know. What are your final thoughts on the draft, Tim? We're not going to get into this draft anymore after this.
Just really excited to dive into these guys further now that they're Packers, now that we know who they have. There's a lot of, great potential with the class. I think the competition, the versatility within the team, and the athletic ability that they bring, everything's increased, and it's made a much deeper team, and a team that can, at least defensively and along the offensive line, there's a lot of versatility there, and it'll be cool to see how the coaches and the schemes take advantage of their versatility and how they use players going forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's going to be the fun thing to watch, and I don't know that there's a version of the Packers before this version that you can really compare it to. Maybe the 2011 team, but you've got so many tools to work with right now on both sides of the ball. It's gonna be fun to watch. The coaches are gonna be able to do things. You're gonna be able to scheme certain things certain ways. It's not going to produce, crazy stat monster players. You're not going to have probably a 2,000-yard rusher. I know Josh Jacobs is trying to chase that, but, that's just not how this team is built. I think you're built to have, kind of a proportional contribution from a lot of these different guys in different ways. And that is going to make it absolutely hell on the other team trying to stop this offense and trying to score on this defense. So get excited, Packers fans. My comment a few days ago, and still stands, and this might be the theme of the rest of the offseason for me, is the Packers Super Bowl window is wide open. It just is. There's just no debate. They are one of the top competitive teams in the NFC, and they should be for the next few years the way that they've been drafting. So very, very excited. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. We've gone late here. It's already tomorrow for Tim. So yeah, and our Shars, you're right. We only had 7 interceptions last year. We need to triple that. You say double, I say triple. I want 21 interceptions this season. And Clint Stoner, all right, we got Clint coming right in at the end here, catching us, sir. Future is bright. Gotta wear shades, y'all. Get your shades on. The future's very bright. It's gonna be hard to see it if you don't put them on. But yes, so thank you guys for hanging out with us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. Check us out on all those socials, YouTube, Twix, Facebook, Instagram. Spike that like button for us and give us a follow. Subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel for us. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans. Go, Pack, go!